Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to session 3A. My name is Lorraine Simpson. The session today is called Deafblind Employment Mentoring, a successful model in rehabilitation setting. My name is Lorraine, and it is my pleasure to moderate this session. Please allow me to introduce our speaker today. Christopher Woodfill is the Helen Keller National Center Associate Executive Director. He's been with HKNC since 2012. Prior to working here, he worked as a teacher at Wisconsin School for the Deaf for 13 years and as an English as a second language instructor at English Language Institute at Galot University for 3 years. He is and was very active in both deaf and deafblind communities at local, state, national, and international levels for almost 3 decades. He is currently a member of the World Federation of the Deafblind Executive Board, as well as other local, national, and international boards. He holds a master's degree in Latin American Studies from the George Washington University and a master's degree in bicultural deaf education from McDaniel College. He is also a certified rehabilitation leader. Please welcome Christopher Woodfill.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Thank you for a really nice introduction. I just want to check in. Can everybody see me? Does everybody have access? Looks good? Excellent. So I'm going to be presenting to everybody today about employment mentoring, specifically for deafblind individuals. I would like to speak to everybody first about why this topic is so important and why I thought I should present on it. We noticed that when deafblind individuals have a mentor that they work with, they have more successful outcomes with employment. Next slide, please. Again. And if you could just do a little bit more. One more. And just go back. The red button.
Back. Oh, I don't know.
I got it. Okay. Sorry about that. So I would just like to speak to my experience and role in working with individuals in deafblind employment. So the Helen Keller National Center, HKNC, is an employment vocational rehab agency. And we work to help individuals get jobs of their choice. That's the role that Helen Keller National Center plays. My role as the Associate Executive Director is I oversee a lot of different employment programs. And I did that up until 2020 when we had some shift within the organization and I started focusing on other projects. But prior to that, I was working on this quite extensively. I oversaw several different programs that we had within the agency. We had the Community Services Program, and that's where we have staff go out in consumers' community where they live, and they work with them there rather than having consumers come to the center on Long Island and receive training in New York. There are plenty of people who have received our services who have never been to New York. We are based in New York, but some have never actually been there because they've received it locally in their home communities through the Community Services Program. I oversaw the vocational services department. And Helen Keller also has different summer youth employment programs. And that's when people come from all across America, the United States, and they come in to receive training. So I was able to oversee that department and that area specifically. And I saw that with both the summer program and the conventional program as well. We had two programs during the summer that I oversaw. One was for the youth, really for teens, and those who are ready to transition into the adult world. They would come in to learn more about their work opportunities, what work involves, and what would be a good fit for them. They would also engage in different employment assessments at that time. Then we also set up another program called the Professional Leadership and Learning Institute, which is a professional internship program. And that's for people who are deafblind, who would like to get into the field of deafblind rehab. So there could be someone who is deafblind who's interested in teaching Braille, or someone who would like to teach technology. Maybe a deafblind person would like to work as an employment coach. Someone who could help develop an individual's job skills. They might want to work on them with tactile communication and teaching tactile sign language. There are lots of different communication needs that some people may want to teach. They could also work with them on independent living skills. If anyone who is deafblind wanted to work in one of those fields and would like an internship around it, they were able to apply to come join our internship, and I would mentor them during that time and help them to become a professional and actually get hired in their job of choice. And we realized that that was really the best approach to do with another deafblind person acting as the mentor. And we call that a peer-to-peer training. And that Professional Leadership and Learning Institute resulted in 28 interns from 2015 to 2023. We had a total of 28 interns, and each and every one of them is still in the deafblind rehab field. They are all working, some as Braille instructors, some as independent living instructors, different job coaches, different job placement and job development coaches. We have a couple of tactile sign language instructors. We've had several technology instructors, and we have noticed that it continues to grow, and it's allowing deafblind individuals to train other deafblind people in America to come and get additional skills that they may need for their resumes. And it really provided just a wealth of experience for people who are looking for a job. Based on that experience, I made this presentation that I'm going to share with you all today. Next slide. So based on all that experience, we developed a mentorship for deafblind individuals and a curriculum surrounding that mentorship, an official curriculum. This way we can continue to support other deafblind individuals in getting employed in their future endeavors. The best part about this is that a deafblind individual seeking this internship would be partnered up with another deafblind individual who would become their mentor. Like myself, I worked with 28 individuals and I mentored each and every one of them. And the other good thing is that Helen Keller National Center has 15 deafblind employees as well. several of whom are out in the field, so they weren't directly involved in the mentoring, but they're still around. And it's great when you want to look at how you can advance your career, what ideas you can get for feedback. Having that environment to share and discuss naturally is very beneficial. The curriculum has 5 core modules in it. The first one addresses what is mentoring. Like what even is mentoring? And I'll speak to that more further on in my presentation. Then we spoke about the responsibilities within the mentoring relationship, the mentor's responsibilities, as well as the mentee's responsibilities. We also spoke about the code of conduct, and that addressed the boundaries between the mentor and mentee and what the expectations are for those boundaries. We also had discussion topics on working while being deafblind. There was a lot of sensitivity challenges and sticky, uncomfortable discussions that had to be had that you could address with your mentee during that time. And that is one of the benefits of having a deafblind mentor, another deafblind individual. You can freely speak to a lot of these concerns, like asking whether or not you should go about this course of action in this scenario, and you can come to a mutual understanding. That was really helpful as well. And also addressing different job-seeking activities. All 5 of those really came together to become our core curriculum for this. Okay, so now as to the question, what is mentoring? Mentoring is really a supportive relationship with mentees. It's where both individuals offer support, assistance, and guidance, all for the benefit of the mentee. More specifically, mentors act as a guide. It's a structured, time-limited activity in a one-to-one relationship that focuses on the needs of that specific mentee. The relationship of a mentor and mentee is not meant to be forever in this scenario. It's really just meant to be a support service, a support system in place until they achieve their desired goals. And then after that success, they can move on with their lives independently. Now for the responsibilities within the mentoring relationship. And that's the responsibilities of both the mentor and the mentee. Keep in mind that in order for it to be successful, the relationship does need to be a two-way street. The mentor has a lot of responsibility, but so does the mentee. They both need to come together and work as one to achieve the goals. And they are going to be defined roles, clearly defined roles and responsibilities for each of their assigned role. The mentor may be expected to set up the agenda for a meeting. They can't just go into a meeting, winging it, seeing what will happen. They need to have specific goals as to what the meeting will be for, what needs to be talked about, what the outcomes of the meeting will be, and what will make it a successful meeting. A mentee, someone who has applied for this program, will be having homework that they have to follow through on. I don't want to say homework, but different responsibilities and tasks that they have to follow through on. And they need to be prepared for any meeting with what was asked of them. It's not going to be allowed to say, I forgot it, or come up with other excuses. Just as the mentor has a responsibility, so does the mentee, and they really do need to work together for that. And both the mentor and the mentee need to follow through on those roles and responsibilities. We don't want a scenario where the mentor is constantly canceling meetings, or where the mentor is committing to do something and then doesn't follow through. If they commit to it, the expectation is that they do it. And then if a mentee is setting up all these goals, they need to keep in mind that once you set it out to achieve it, you do need to work to do so. And you will do so with the support of your mentor, but you do have to follow through on your goals. In terms of the code of conduct, having an established code of conduct is essential to successful outcomes, and it ensures that the relationship is successful and productive towards the objective of securing a successful outcome, an employment outcome. It also clearly establishes a boundary between mentors and mentees. Mentors and mentees in this scenario are not friends. They're not going to be in a relationship together. There's not going to be any crossing of the boundaries there. You're going to work together for these clear, defined goals and work to achieve them. You want to keep it professional. The goal is to focus here and not add like additional things of like, oh, I really want to become friends, or maybe we can go out afterwards. That is going to stray from the path, and it's not what we want to achieve here. We want to keep the goals in mind and do what we can to achieve them. You really want to be able to eliminate any and all possible distractions.
Well,
Here are the different discussions that were pretty hot topic items that we had to talk about. Just want to make sure that we are making good time. Accommodations. That was a very important discussion in order to have a successful outcome. Now, working with someone as a deafblind individual, working with 28 different deafblind individuals, not one of those 28 mentees had the same accommodations. Because as we all know here, no deafblind individuals are alike. Everyone is unique. So each and every one of those 28 mentees had different accommodations that we had to talk about. And we would do that. We would talk about specifically what they needed, whether or not they needed interpreters or specific equipment, audiological equipment, low vision equipment. The accommodations obviously were numerous, and we talked about each and every one of them. Sometimes we had to talk about lighting and windows and putting up curtains to block windows. For some individuals with severe light sensitivity, that was something that we had to put in place for them. So we just installed shades, and that was an accommodation that we were able to come up with. Like I said, I wouldn't have enough time to go into them all, but we would take the time to review with each mentee what they needed and allowed them to think about what their needs were. So this way they had a good understanding of what was a successful accommodation for them. Then later, when they went into the workforce, they were able to express what they needed, negotiate what they needed, and get those accommodations in place for themselves, which also led to how we spoke about negotiating and communication skills. I will admit I'm not the most familiar with Canadian laws or Australian or many of the other countries represented here. But in the United States, we do have a law called the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act. And that actually has two very important words in it. One of them is a reasonable accommodation. and the other is undue hardship. And a reasonable accommodation means that you can't ask for the world. That's not something you can really ask for. You need to come to an agreement and say, like, okay, this is what I need, this is what I want, and really have it be worked out in a successful manner for you to get what you need for those accommodations. You also can't go in with a list of demands saying, I need each and every one of these things, because that's not the real world. So we had to talk to them about what they needed, what was reasonable, what they could live with, what they could live without. And I would always say, don't go in asking for the word, because that's when they can refer to that undue burden. Because if you're asking for something that is going to have an exorbitant cost, a company may not be able to afford it, and therefore they can deny the accommodation for that reason. You know, if a company looks at your request and says, I wouldn't be able to do this, it wouldn't be successful, and it wouldn't be on them for the failing. So you really need to be able to communicate what you need. And that topic was very sticky at times. And I had to be pretty explicit in my explanation to different deafblind participants so that they knew about the realistic expectations. Then we spoke to different blindness skills, whether or not they needed things in Braille, if they needed a Braille display, JAWS, different software that they may need. Maybe they need, you know, they have good cane skills, but they need more for learning the new workplace. We would talk about different ones to see what they felt they'd comfortable in and what was missing, and then we would try to work towards those missing skills. And we did the same with different deaf skills. You know, there are some individuals who are born deaf, and they may not think, oh, I don't have any deaf skills. But people who were not congenitally deaf and instead came out with hearing loss later in life, they may have their own assistive listening devices that they may need accommodations on. Maybe that looks like an FM system for some people, having microphones for others. There really are a broad span of what that could look like. It could be that they need to learn sign language, or they might need to learn another form of communication. Again, those are different skills that we would touch upon and see where they needed training in. Disclosure was another difficult topic to discuss. In America, anyway, it's always a hot topic in the community as to when and if you should discuss and disclose your disability. When do you share that you're deafblind? Like, at what point in your job search do you say? When you send in your resume, do you just add a sentence in your cover letter saying, oh, just so you know, I am deafblind, I will need X, Y, and Z accommodations? Or do you wait? Do you wait until after they ask for an interview? Do you wait until after you have the interview confirmed? And once you're in the interview, is that when you disclose it? Some people prefer to wait until after they're hired. Once they're actually meeting with the company as an employee, that's when they like to disclose it. Unfortunately, there is no right answer. I don't have it anyway. But in my discussions with each and every mentee, I checked to see what their comfort level was. And some people were like, I just tell her right away. And others are like, I prefer to wait until after I start working. And then once I'm in the organization, that's when I disclose it. I always base my response on their preference and their comfort level. And I would ask them, like, how would you get to that comfort level? Like, what made you decide that's when to disclose? And we would revolve our discussions around that. Another hard thing to discuss was social skills and soft skills, especially related to deafblind individuals. Many hearing sighted individuals have access to incidental learning. And so right away, because of that, they may know that a behavior is off or not correct, and someone may address it quickly and they can adjust immediately. And that information is critical because having that feedback helps people to adjust. And we found that a lot of deafblind individuals don't get that. So they are engaging in these behaviors and social skills that are not appropriate, and they won't lead to much success. In fact, generally they lead to people avoiding them because no one's willing to have that discussion with them. No one's willing to have that conversation to give them that feedback. So that's when I would step in. We would have that conversation about what's appropriate, what clothing is appropriate, how showing up on time is expected. If you have a disagreement, how do you handle that in a respectful way? If there's any conflicts, how do you resolve that conflict? That was a skill that was lacking in a lot of the participants that we had to address any of those soft skills. Also, technology was constantly brought up. Transportation, that's something that we would sit down and discuss. Okay, you have this job, you live here, how are you going to get to that job? We had to sometimes explain that it's not the company's responsibility to provide that transportation, especially in America where transportation is not anyone's responsibility, it's on the individual to provide transportation. They needed to figure out how they could get to and from work. What were their options? What was a viable solution for them? And we would have a discussion as to how they can make that happen. And also, we talked about communication. What do you need for communication? Do you want sign language? Do you prefer spoken English? Do you want a mixture of both? Here we have 28 mentors and mentees. You can imagine each and every one of them had their own communication module that we had to modality that we had to meet. Yeah, this was a short one, just 3 bullet points. I don't want to spend too much time on job seeking activities because I'm sure that there's a lot of people already proficient with that, but I do want to speak to a couple of different areas of it. The first one being career planning. Some interns that I was working with we had, to deal with their issues because this was a second career for them. They were in one career and they had to leave due to their sensory loss. So maybe they wanted to build upon that and take their new career in the deafblind community. I can certainly use myself as an example. I was a teacher for 16 years. I taught English at Wisconsin School for the Deaf and English at Gallaudet University. And over time, as I realized that my vision loss was progressing, I thought, okay, I'm going to have a career that's just going to be a teacher and it's going to be a successful one. I'm going to be very happy. But I had to come to a realization that I'm no longer able to do that. And that's when I jumped into the career of deafblind rehabilitation. And I'll tell you, the two careers are very different. Education and vocational rehab are very, very different. So that did take some training on my end to fully learn what was expected of me so that I could be successful in my new career. And that was one of the reasons why I became a certified rehabilitation leader. And I'm one of 2 deafblind certified vocational rehab leaders in America. There's a lot of different people who hold the certificate, but I'm one of 2 who are deafblind. And so I did work with others who were in similar situations, but some of whom were younger. They were young and they knew exactly what they wanted, like looking at teaching technology. They have lots of different certificates available to individuals to teach technology, like the CATIS, C-A-T-I-S certification, the JAWS certification. There are numerous certifications available to people who can get those and become successful as a technology teacher. But you have to sit down and be able to talk to them about what is needed so they can be successful in that case. There were other individuals who had really high expectations. And I think that's great. They could go ahead and achieve goals and get their degrees, such as a bachelor's or a master's degree. And so they have all this academic accreditation, but they don't have a lot of job experience to their name. And so we would have to talk about that and say, yes, congratulations on your achievement. It's great that you have all these degrees, but you don't have any employment skills. And they would fall back on their higher education. And I would say, unfortunately, you are starting at something of a disadvantage because you don't have the skills that you would get while working. So we would give them what they needed so that they could finally make up the gaps that they were having and really get into the careers of their choosing. And we did all this during the interview, and we would cover it all with them so that they could apply to the jobs that they wanted and get the careers and be successful. I'll be honest, I also didn't cover a lot of the job placement assistance with that. I would mostly convey and connect them with people who would help them with that. But there are some locations that they didn't have a lot of supports available, especially in their home locations. So I would step in and assist in that setting, and I would work with them to make sure that they did have the job placement assistance that was necessary. But most of the time, they did have a home team who was ready, who could step in, and I could just hand off that responsibility to their home team and help them with the job placement. And all this came together to really make it, in a holistic way, a success for deafblind individuals to be satisfied with the career of their choosing, specifically within the deafblind rehabilitation field. And that is one of the things that I'm most proud of. Allowing individuals to go in and succeed and really excel in the fields of their choosing, and getting more deafblind people in the deafblind rehabilitation field. If anyone has any questions or is interested in having a more in-depth conversation about any of the things I brought up, I'd be happy to share with you my slides, or we could talk about my curriculum. I could even share it, and you could speak with me further on for more discussions.
Well, right.
Now I would just like to take some time to reflect on why mentoring is critical for deafblind individuals to achieve employment outcomes. And we're not going to talk about this now, but as you leave, these are just some parting words I would like you to reflect on and think about why it is important. Why should we help deafblind individuals with this? Why should deafblind individuals mentor deafblind? And it's not just for deafblind people, because we don't want the automatic decision to be like, oh, they can work as a stock associate, or they can have like these low-paying, menial jobs that are not what they want. We do want to be able to give them access to the careers of their choosing. So now I'm going to open it up and check in. Do we have any questions? I do believe we have a couple of seconds left. So really, we should have plenty of time.
We have one question.
Hello. Thank you so much for this wonderful lecture. It's really, really inspiring. I'm Femke Krijger from the Netherlands, and I'm sure I will find you and continue to talk about this in depth. But for now, I was wondering, how long does it average process of this mentoring takes? What's the normal time that a mentor and a mentee are working together in this process?
And this is Chris. Just to repeat the question was how long, like average, how long is the duration for this mentoring process? When I was facilitating it, it was 3 months. I thought that that was a good amount of time to really help individuals adjust their focus and think about where they're coming from, get what they needed, and move on with work. And I personally would meet with them twice a week. If necessary, I would meet more. But we would also give time for mentors to meet with the department supervisors. And they would meet with them as well twice a week. So every week, the mentee would have 4 meetings to talk about their progress, what's going on within their department. There are a lot of natural supports involved, so on average, I would say 3 months.
Hello, this is Paola from Australia. I just wanted to ask your personal opinion on, so mentoring, do you think they should always be deaf and blind, or hearing people can do that role? You know, in Australia we have deafblind consultants, but I'm just wondering your opinion over that topic.
And this is Chris. Again, I'll just repeat the question. The question was, do the mentors have to be deafblind, or can a hearing sighted individual also be a mentor? My personal opinion is I want to avoid the word must. I don't think it must be this, but I would strongly encourage a deafblind mentor. I do think that that would be better, because I know in many countries, there are not a lot of professional deafblind professionals. And so the idea would die if I said that it must be this way. Ideally, it would be great if you had someone who perhaps was hearing sighted, but they have like a really good, rich understanding of deafblind culture, different communication needs, understanding of the issues, and are comfortable addressing them, sometimes in a very direct manner. Hearing culture, sometimes they prefer to use what's called a sandwich approach, which is you have a positive interaction, then you hedge it with like a negative thing that needs to be addressed, and then you end it with a positive. My culture is to be a little bit more direct and to just talk about the issues at hand. So again, I don't want to use the word must, but I do strongly encourage it.
Hi, this is Shay from Canada. I've been having a hard time finding employment. I don't know if I'm giving too much information too soon, because I'll say that I'm deafblind and that I will have my own intervention. So should I perhaps leave that out of a cover letter? Sorry.
And this is Chris. I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So your question is, would you have more success if you had an intervener with you during your interview?
Well, I haven't been able to get any interviews at this point because I give the information, but I'm not getting any callbacks. Or somebody will say, we don't have the position available, but they'll still continue to ask for people to apply for the job.
And this is Chris. Yes, unfortunately, The truth is, there is still a lot of discrimination and oppression in the work area for deafblind individuals, and I'll just be candid about that. You know, I don't want to say like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. It's probably not what's happening. The truth is, in my understanding, that is still happening. I don't think it's coming from a place of hatred. I do think it's purely from a place of ignorance. They're just simply saying like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to hire someone who's deafblind. I don't know how to work with someone in that setting. So the issue really comes into educating the organization and the employer and working with them on how they can work with deafblind people so that we can remove that ignorance and get rid of that fear. So this way they feel more comfortable hiring deafblind individuals. If you are applying for a job and you have a good relationship with an agency, you know, you can share that information with them, just saying like, oh, future employee, here's how you can work with me. And maybe you could address that outright if you want to be open about it at the beginning, and that helps to alleviate some of the fears. That is something that Helen Keller is currently doing now. We're working hard to educate different employers. We do have, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm wrong. We don't have any time left. I thought we had 1 minute left, but it's now 1 minute over. So I just want to check in. Do we have any final questions? I mean, I just want to check in before I end it. Do we have anything left? Oh. The guy in the purple?
Hello, everyone. My name is Elio, and I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I work at CHKC, the Canadian Helen Keller Centre. Oh, let me just say I can understand the frustrations for those that are deafblind looking for employment, meaningful employment, and the amount of time and effort that we spend advocating and trying to resolve and break down barriers. I myself have worked in a grocery store and have also been looking for employment, and I feel like service providers, employers, once they know that I'm deaf-blind, they make a decision about what I can and cannot do. And as a deaf-blind person, I try to advocate for the need of an intervener to work with me and able to do so. And I've had luck. I've been hired and have had great experiences in terms of finding meaningful employment. I think me working with the deaf-blind community, I often try to help them self-advocate on what they need and what their needs are. But there is a level of frustration. There are challenges out there. And so we often want meaningful employment. We want to be involved. We want to be contributing as meaningful agents in society. And so I think that the work for that what Chris you're speaking about, that the Helen Keller National Centre is accomplishing with this mentorship program is really admirable. Thank you.
And this is Chris. Thank you, and you're welcome, Elio. Thank you for those kind words. I am happy to share this information, and anyone who would like to, I'll be here all week. I'm here until Friday, so please feel free to come up and talk to me. Again, thank you all so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time today. And I hope someone, you learned a thing or two. So thank you all.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris, for sharing so much of your knowledge with us today. It was incredibly interesting, very inspiring. We have a little gift for you, which I will give to you. Please accept this with our appreciation.
Oh, thank you.